We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chaf, 7 lines down from the top of the Yamud. So the Gemara here is the last point, continuing from what we learned yesterday, regarding a person selling his daughter to be a Amma in a situation where it's not possible for the master to marry her, to be miyayit her, because he's a relative or he's pasul. So the Gemara brings two braises about this. Tani Chade, and one braisa we learned, Moichra la'aviv, the father could sell his daughter to his father, which means basically to the grandfather. But vei moichra lebnai, he can't sell his daughter as a maid for his son. It's one brisa. But in another brisa it says, ei moichra loy la'aviv v'loy lebnai, he can't sell his daughter as a maid, not for his father, not for his son. So the Gemara explains, the brisa that says that you can't sell her as a maid, not to the father, not to the son. Sorry, k'Rabbanan. That's like the Rabbanan's opinion that it's only if it's if yield is possible, then you could sell to such a master. Otherwise, there's no yield. But the brisa that says that you could sell your daughter to your father, but not to a son. Come on, according to who is this going? Why should we make this difference? Like Rabbanan, not like Rabbanan say that yid must be possible, and like Rabbi Eliezer, but not like Rabbi Eliezer either. It says that you could that you cannot sell to your son. Says the Gemara, La'olam K'Rabbanan. Really, this is following the opinion of Rabbanan that Amma Ivriya is only when yid is possible. But Moed Rabbanan, the Rabbanan agree that you could sell your daughter Heichadikit Sad Yid. If there's one possibility of yid, then it's also enough that she'll be able to be sold. What's yid? Yid can be done whether to the master himself or to the son of the master. So over here, when you're selling your daughter to your father, and there's either the father or the son that you can be miyayit to, so to the son, yid will be possible. Because to the son, that's a niece. It's an uncle, exactly. It's will be uncle marrying a niece, which is allowed. So yid will be possible. But if you're selling your daughter to your son, which basically is you're selling to your brother, so then there's no yid possible, not to him and not to the son either, because then it's going to be a chaysaviv. Either way, it's not going to be there's no yid over here. Okay, not to him and not to his son, because the son will be a chaysaviv, right? It's going to the amma will be the aunt. Right? We're talking about selling to a brother, so then the amma will be an aunt. So either way, there's no yid. So then the brisa says v'loy levnai. Talk to Gemara. So we begin our new inyan, separate new subject over here about no different halachas over here, but about everything. Tan Rabbanan im begapa yavai begapa yetze. The pasuk says if the Eved Ivri came in begapa. So the Gemara here will teach now what this means. So begapa yetze. What does that mean? Begufay nichnas. If he came in with his body, begufa yetze. He goes out with his body as his whole. Gemara will soon explain. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer yichidi nichnas yichidi yetze. He comes in alone. Begapa means alone. He goes out alone. So what does this mean? My begufa nichnas begufa yetze. Omar Rav, so Rav explains, loymar to say she'enu yetze beroshi evarim ke'eved, that he will not be released from his master like it is with an eved kanani. If the master knocks out an eye or something, one of the roshi evarim, so then that releases him. He goes free automatically. But by an eved ivri, he doesn't go out this way. That's what the pasuk is saying, that his whole guf is intact. That's when he goes out. He doesn't go out when one aver is missing, like an Evet Kanani. So the Gemara asks on this, sorry, Amalei Habaya, but we learned this already from another pasuk. Milay Seitze, Kitzei Sa'avadim. In the pasuk where it says, when you get to Amma Ivriya leaving, it says she doesn't leave like Avadim, like a Evet Kanani that leaves when there's a Chasta Aver, when you knocked out one Aver. Says the Gemara, Imahasam Havamine Nesav Ledmei Nevinepok. Maybe what that pasuk is saying is that she doesn't leave the way Evet Kanani does. Evet Kanani, if you knock out an eye, so then he just gets released free, and the master does not have to pay anything for what he did. Maybe by Am Ivriya, what we're excluding is that she will go free and the master has to pay. So there's no raya that she doesn't go free. Kamash Malon, therefore the pasuk is saying Begapa Yavi Begapa Yetze, that when she or he, the Evet, goes out, it's when he has his whole body, not going out through this that he knocked out an eye. Comes in alone and he leaves alone. What does this mean that he goes out alone? This is what he's saying. Yesh le'ishu banim. If when he came into Avdos, he was already married with a wife and children, so then Rabbi Meisla Shivcha Kananis. Then the master is allowed to give him to marry a Shivcha Kananis in addition to have children for the master. But Ein le'ishu banim. If he wasn't married before with a family, Ein Rabbi Meisla Shivcha Kananis. Then the master is not allowed to give him a Shivcha Kananis to marry. So if he came in alone, he's going to leave alone. Tana Rabbanan.
Either way goes out.
Again?
Either way goes out. Even
No.
if Shivcha Kananis stays by that, no?
No. If he's married to the Shivcha Kananis, so then he stays married to her.
And he goes out with her. Chilla stays by the other.
But he could marry her when he's by the Yodin. Like, I have to look into that. He can marry her against his will. He can marry her when he's by the Yodin. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in Abraisa, Nimkar b'moneh. If a person, the Eved, was sold when his value was then a moneh. Now v'ishbiach v'amad amasayim. Then later on, his value went up, and now he's worth double, 200. So now we're discussing over here when he wants to leave and he wants to deduct from the time that he worked and he wants to pay back the master for what he was worth in the beginning. So we go by the value that he was at the time when he was sold, which is a moneh. And we don't say, look at how much you're worth today. That when he goes and he frees himself, you go from the value that was paid when he was sold. How about the opposite? When he was sold, then he was worth more. His value went down. Now he's only worth one money. How do we know that over here I'm going to take the opposite approach? Also lenient. That we're only going to consider his value the way it is now. He's only worth a money, so he has to pay according to that value. Talmud loima kefishonov. So there's another pasuk where it says that v'chishav loy kefishonov yashas gulasa, that he has to give back the money based on the years now, what his value is today. I would say that this only applies to an Eved Ivri that's sold to a guy. That's what these psukim say. Since I see that the Torah gave an extra way how he could be redeemed through relatives, so we see that the master, the Goyish master, he has the lower hand, and the Torah wants him to be redeemed, the Eved. But Nimkal Yisrael Minolan, how do I know that this leniency applies to an Eved Ivri sold to another Yid? We have a Gzeira Shava that was already brought earlier in the Gemara, the term Sacha that says by an Eved sold to a guy and an Eved sold to a Yid. Amar Abaye. Abaye said one day, Hareini ki ben Azai b'shukei Tverya. Today, my mind is very clear to me, like Ben Azai was in Shukei Tverya, when Ben Azai was very sharp, and the Gemara brings, Rashi brings from the Gemara in B'chayres that Ben Azai said that all Chachmei Yisrael in front of me is like the peel of a garlic. So Abaye said, today I'm like Ben Azai. You can ask me any question. So one of the Rabbanan asked Abaye regarding the drasha that was brought over here in the Gemara before, that when the value of the Evet changes, we always go lenient. If its value went down, so we're going to go according to the lower value today. If when he was sold, his value was lower, we go according to his value then. So he asked him, Mechti, let's see. Hani Kroy, these two psukim. In one pasuk it says, Mikesav v'knasai, follow his value the way it was when he was sold. Another pasuk it says, follow his value today. So you can expand it like we did, that it's in the lenient sense. But you could say in the opposite, but maybe we should go stringent and say that you follow with the higher value that he was when he was sold, or the higher value that he is today. Why are you darshaning leniently? You can darshan stringently. So the Gemara answers, or Abai answered, no, it doesn't make sense to go stringent, because we see that the Torah is telling us to be lenient with an Eved. Tanya, the Braisa says, that this Eved Ivri, he has to be good. It has to be good for him with you. What does this mean? When it comes to eating, drinking, he has to be with you, which means you're going to eat good bread from good, very well sifted flour, and he's eating bread from flour that has the chaff in it, whatever, different things that it's not cheaper flour. And you're drinking geshmaka, old, good flavored wine, and he drinks the fresh wine, which is not as good. You're sleeping on cotton pillows and blankets, and he sleeps on straw. If you buy yourself a evedivri, it's like you're buying a master for yourself. Because if you're only going to have one, you're going to have to give it to him and not to you. So you have to take care of him even better than yourself. So we see over here that the Torah wants us to treat a evet properly. So therefore, when we have the two options of how to darshan regarding redeeming him, we go with the lenient option. No, the drasha is by a evet ivri. No, it's a drasha by a evet ivri solta guy. Evet ivri solta guy, and then we have the drasha sakha, but it's still by a evet ivri. Says the Gemara, but maybe this you have to treat an evet ivri well. It's only regarding eating, drinking, and those other things while he's an evet by you. Not to give him any suffering while he's an evet by you. But maybe when it comes to redeeming him, there's actually a reason that we should be stringent with him. Why? Based on what Rabbi Yosef Chanina says, and here we're going to have a big arichis in this brayse where it basically will point out the fact that he's being sold as an eved ivri is a result of his own averis. Otherwise, he wouldn't come to such a point. So maybe over here we have to be stringent with him when it comes to redeeming him. The Tanya Rabbi Yosef Chanina, come and see how difficult or how harsh it is for a person if he gets involved in even the dust of an isser of shmita. And Rashi says, as we see in the Gemara, which isser are we referring to as afkash or shvius? Adam noisav and noisav bepeidah shvius. If a person will take the fruits of shmita and sell it, do business with it, this is called avak shvius because it's only an isser of an essa. The pasuk says la'achla, that the fruits of shmita you can eat it, but v'loy l'schayre. It's not made for business. So therefore it's only an isser of essa, so it's called an avak shvius. And so this person does business with this fruits, what happens? L'soif moicheres metaltlov. The end is going to be that he's going to sell, he's going to be forced, he'll be poor, and he'll have to sell from his items. Shenema, the pasuk there says, this is in Parshas Bahar, it talks first about Shemitah, and then that you know, lo'achla v'loy l'schayra, and then it says, b'shnas ha'yevel teshuv ishlach hazasai, the same halacha like Shemitah applies to Yevel as well. And then v'samich lei, afterwards the pasuk says, v'chisimkuru mimkul amisecha, oikana miyad amisecha, that you're selling something to your friend. So what does this mean? Dova nikne miyad liyad. This is talking about metaltlin, that you're selling, that you give over from one hand to another. So the first level that will happen to the person is he'll fall and he'll lose money. He'll have to sell movables, items, the metaltlin. Now, loy hirgish, if the person does not pay attention to what's happening, so l'soif, in the end, what's going to happen is moicheres hadaisa. He's going to have to sell from his properties. Shenema ki yamach achicha, he'll become so poor. Umachem achuzasa, he's going to have to sell from his inheritance. Loi bas liyadai, if it will not come to his hands, he will not realize what happened to him. Achemoiches beisai, he's going to have to sell his own house that he lives in. Shenema ki yimkei bayis moishav ir chayma. Now the Gemara here interjects for a second into this braise and explains the difference in the expression. The first time it said loi hirgish. Maishna asam da amar loi hirgish. First time around he didn't feel, he didn't realize what's happening. Or maishna hachad amar loi bas liyadai. Different expression. Rashi explains like boss. The other means it will not come to his hands, meaning it's not going to come to his attention. So the difference is Rav Huna, based on what Rav Huna explained. Rav Huna, kivin sha'avar adam aveda. When a person does an aveda once, vishanaba, then does it a second time, hutrulay becomes permissible to him. Hutrulay salkitaitach becomes permissible. Elan nasas like that. Once you do it the first time, a person feels guilty. But then you do it again, it's harder gets into the person deeper, and it becomes like a hatter for the person. So that's what it's saying over here. First time it says loy hirgish. He's not feeling it, he's not paying attention. Second time it says loy boss, is saying it will not come to him because it becomes like a hatter to him. Continuing in the braise, loy boss yodai at shemoiches bitay. If it's not going to come to him, and then he's going to end up selling his daughter. Shenemar v'chiyimker ish as bitay lama. He's going to sell his daughter as a maid. Now the Gemara immediately explains. The Amos says if you look there in Parshas Bahar, there's all these psukim there. It does not talk over there about a person selling his daughter as a maid. So why is the Gemara bringing this in here? The next thing there it says in the Parsha is the issur of borrowing money for interest, ribis. So why is it bringing in this before that? So the Gemara explains, "V'afagav the bitul like siva ba'in yana" doesn't clearly say this that he sells his daughter as a maid, but hakamash malon. This is what this Bryce is telling me. Nizben in his brate. A person would rather sell his daughter as a maid and not to borrow money for ribis. Why? My time. If If he's selling his daughter, so he gets money through this, and what happens? Over time, if he wants to redeem her, every day that passes, the amount that he has to pay to redeem her keeps on going down. But when it comes to ribis, so interest over time, the interest grows, and he gets interest ends up, you borrow money with interest, you end up losing money. So basically what this Bryce is saying is, even though it didn't spell out in the pasuk clearly before it mentions ribis, that he sold his daughter, but Rashi uses the expression nan sahadi. We know for a fact that before the person borrowed money with ribis, he tried something else. He tried selling his daughter, or he sold his daughter, because that's an easier way how to get money without having to pay interest. Weiter the Bryce continues, Loi basal yadoi, if this will not come to him, he doesn't realize now what happened, then Achalava beribis, he'll end up borrowing money for ribis. And then the samach lei, then it says al tikach mitay v'goymer, that's the neshach v'tarbis ribis. Weiter le basel yadai, this does not come yet to him, he doesn't realize at shemoiches atzmai, he has to end up selling himself. That he sold to you. And then the pasuk actually says he sells himself to a ger, shenemer leger, and v'loy leger tzedek. We're not talking about a ger, someone that's a real ger yid. El leger toishav. A ger toishav is a guy that's a resident and he keeps sheva mitzvahs bnei noyach, and shenemer ger toishav. That's what the pasuk there says. And then the pasuk further says mishpachas ger ze'oivik kachavim. This means he's being sold to oivik kachavim, even to avodah zarah. Then keshuaymer. Then the pasuk further there describes le'eker. What does le'eker mean? That he's being sold. He's being sold to Avodah Zarah itself. Rashi says this means he's being sold as an evet to work for Avodah Zarah, to chop wood and do other works during Avodah Zarah. Doesn't mean mamish Avodah Zarah itself, but to do work for Avodah Zarah. So what do you see from all this? That the fact that a person becomes an eved is because of all this succession of Avedis Avir, that he brought it upon himself. So maybe this is a punishment, and when it comes to redeeming him, so we should be stringent about this. You can't compare it to treating him well while he's an eved. So Yambai answered, but even regarding this, that he was sold because of his aveda, and there's no reason to be stringent, because later the pasuk itself says that you have to make an effort to redeem him. The Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, this yid fell to such a point. He became mamish like a priest for Avodah Zarah. It doesn't literally mean a priest, but it means that like he's there with Avodah Zarah working there. You might think that once he fell so far, throw a rock after the person that's falling, that he should fall even further, and you shouldn't make an effort to redeem him. After he's sold, so you should see that he should be redeemed. One of his brothers should redeem him. But the Gemara still argues on this. But maybe I should say, yeah, the Titus Taka is saying, see to it that he should be redeemed. So he shouldn't become assimilated amongst the Goyim. But, as far as the actual way, how we evaluate to redeem him, maybe we still have to be stringent about how we redeem him. Right? We only said before, don't push a stone after him, that he should be just, don't forget about him totally. But who says, where do you see over here a source that you have to be extra lenient when his value goes down, or in the beginning his value was less? And the Gemara asks, the point of Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Chanina, that this is caused by his Aveda, still remains. So maybe for the actual evaluation of his leaving, we should be stringent. So the Gemara now brings another source. Omar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman by Yitzchak says, Trei Kroik Sivi. So there's two different psukim over here that it says about this. Going back to the psukim that we brought before, so he says, look in the pasuk. It says, Im oid rabbis pashanim. So one pasuk where it says the mikesef miknasai, so it starts off that pasuk saying oid rabbis pashanim, that there's a lot of years. Oksiv, and then in the other pasuk we quoted before where it says kifishanav, that pasuk starts v'maat nisha pashanim, that there's a few years over here. So the question on these psukim are, when it comes to an eved ivri being sold, is there many years or few years? Rashi says the Gemara's question is, every eved ivri is sold for 6 years. There's no more, there's no less. That's what it is. So what is the pasuk saying? Ella, what it's saying is, Nisra b'kaspai, if his value went up, then that's the pasuk where it says, in that pasuk it says, mikesef miknasai. Then you go by his value in the beginning when it was sold, which was less. Nismayit kaspais, his value went down. So that's what the pasuk where it says in that pasuk it continues and says kifishanav. Then you go according to his value today that it went down. So you see here in this pasuk clearly that it tells you to be lenient. The Gemara asks on this, why are you coming up with this drasha? Ve'eme hachikama. Why can't we learn the simple pshat of the pasuk? What does it mean when it says many years, few years? Simple. Hey chadav, if out of the 6 years you work 2 years, upashle dalid, and there's 4 years left, so there's more years. There's the majority out of the 6 years left. So he has to pay for the 4 years that he still has to work. But if you already worked 4 years and there's only 2 years left, so then he gives according to the only 2 years that are left over. Answers the Gemara, Im Kain, if that was the pshat, the simple pshat of the pasuk, then nichtiv kra, the pasuk should say, Im oid rabis shanim, Im ma'at nisha shanim, if there's many years still left or there's less years left. My bishonim, what does in the years mean? That means something happened in the year. Nisra bekaspai bishonim, if his value went up in the year, then because of miknasa, you go according to his value in the beginning. Nismaid kaspai bishonim, if his value went down in the years, then kifishanav, you go according to his value today. So here, this is the source that we're leaning in. Rav Yosef said about this, Darshinu, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Lahani Kroi Kisinai. He darshan these psukim so clearly, mamish, this is the way it was given L'Moshe Misinai. Okay, the Gemara now continues on related subjects, and there's a simon there, Simon Eved Bayis Chatzoin Bayis Eved Kroivim. Boyeminei Rav Huna Bachinnim Rav Sheshes. Eved Ivri Hanim Kelevi Kechavim. An Eved Ivri that sold to a guy, Nigal Lachatzoin. So when you're coming to redeem him, so what's if you don't have enough money to redeem him fully? Could he be redeemed halfway? Or ain't a Nigal Lachatzoin? Or he can't be redeemed halfway. So the simple pshat over here, Rashi says is, if you redeem him halfway, so that means that he's half of him, he doesn't have to work anymore. Okay. So that's what. Now, what's the question? What is this based on? Do I say that I learned this out? Ge'ulasai mistei achuzah. There's the word ge'ulasai that it says here by redeeming an eved, and the term ge'ulasai that it says when you come to redeem a stei achuzah. Stei achuzah is a property that you inherited from your ancestors of the chalukah of Eretz Yisrael, and you sell that property. So over there, what's the halacha? So mas dei achuzah, just like by a stei achuzah, ein a nigel lachatzan. Over there also, the pasuk speaks about redeeming it. And here the pasuk clearly says you can't redeem it from the buyer if you don't have the full price. Rashi brings the pasuk, it says, kedei ge'ulasai. Only kedei, if you have the full price. So afai nami, when it comes to Eved Divri sold to a guy, ain't a nigel lachatzan, you can't redeem him halfway. Or perhaps, based on what we learned before, we'll say, L'kula amdinam. Even if we're going to compare it to the stei achuzah, and we're going to say that he can't be redeemed halfway, that's only if it comes out to be a leniency. And the Gemara will soon spell out how and when this will come out to be a leniency. But l'chumra lo amdinam, we're not going to apply this, that he can't be redeemed halfway if it comes out to be a stringency. See soon in the Gemara when this plays out. Amalei. So Rav Sheshes answered, Lav Amrit, didn't we learn before, Hasam, that Nimka Kuloi v'lo Chetzei. When you sell an Eved, so you only can sell him if he's being sold fully, not if he's being sold halfway. If you remember, if he sold 1,000, and again, if he stole 500, that is, and he's worth 1,000, so you only have to sell half of his value. You don't sell him half for 3 years instead of for 6 years. So Achanami over here as well, Nigal Kuli v'lo Chetzei. When he's redeemed, you can only redeem him if you redeem him fully. There's no such a thing as redeeming half of the Eved. Now the Gemara spells out the point we said before, that it could be l'kula or l'chumra. Amar Abaye said, if you're going to say that the Eved Divri could be redeemed halfway, mishkachas lo l'kula or l'chumra, then this could come out to be a kula for him, or could come out to be a chumra for him. How is this? So l'kula, the leniency would be zavnei b'meya. If he was bought for $100, let's say. So now, if he wants to redeem himself halfway, Yav lechabshin pal gedadami. So he pays 50, half of his value. But then what happened? V'ashbach, and now his value went up. V'kal malmoson, and now he's worth 200, and now he wants to redeem the other half of himself. So if you're going to say that half of him was already redeemed before, so now he's worth 200. So half of that, how much does he have to give now? Yav lemeya. He's going to have to give 100 to redeem himself. And then so he can go out. So okay, so he gave the 50 before for one half, and now he only has to give 100 for the other half. But if you're going to say that he's not redeemed halfway, So then, Yavle Mevachamshin, since his value now is 200, so the money he gave before to redeem himself did not take effect, B'chlal. The master is holding on to that money like a pekadon. So therefore, he has to redeem himself according to his value today, and now he's worth 200. So he's going to have to give now 150 to combine with the 50 that he gave before, 200 to redeem himself. So this is the case that it comes out to be a kula if you say that he could be redeemed halfway. Now the Gemara just explains that we have to add another detail to this case because there's a question here. Didn't we say before the halacha nisra bekaspe mikasef miknosai that if his value went up from when he was sold, so that in such a case we don't go by the higher to redeem himself. We don't go by the higher value that he is today. We go according to the values before. So how can you say that the leniency plays out in such a case where his value went up? We still stay with the previous value anyways. Answers the Gemara, no, there is a case where we're going to go according to the higher value now, and that is going to Oiker, V'zal V'Oiker. If originally when he was sold, he was worth that higher value of 200, and then his value went down, and then it went back up. So in such a case, when his value went down, he was able to redeem himself with the lower value because we go lenient according to what his value is now. But as soon as his value goes back up, we do go back to the way he was originally when he was sold. So in such a case, this kula that we just said before will play out. Now, Abaye continues, it says, Mishkachas la l'chumre. You could have this also, that if he could be redeemed halfway, it'll end up being a stringency for him. And that is in the case with the opposite of before. Zavne b'masan. When he was acquired, he was worth 200. So now if he wants to redeem himself halfway, Yav mea palged dami, he gives 100, half of his value, and so he's now half. What happens? Va'ichsif. Now his value went down. The Kamal Mei is only worth 100. So if you're going to say that when he redeemed himself before he was redeemed, so therefore now Yav lechamshin v'nafik, he's going to have to give 50, half of his value of what he is now, in order to redeem himself. So it comes out that he had to give before in the beginning, what did he give? 100, and now he gave additional 50 to be redeemed. But if you're going to say that what he gave before, so he's not going to, that what happened before did not take effect at all, so then you go according to the value that he's now. So then Hanach Meya Pekodin in Ugabe, the 100 that he gave before didn't do anything. That's just a Pekodin. And now, in order to redeem himself, he's only worth 100 today. So So you can just use that 100, and he can go out free. So in such a case, if he's redeemed halfway, it comes out to be a stringency. Now the Gemara brings up a similar shaila regarding redeeming half, regarding another situation. A person is selling a house that is in a city that's surrounded with a wall. So this is also in Eretz Yisrael, but over here, the halacha of a bayis that's in the city with a wall is that you can't redeem it for the first year after you sold it. After the first year, so then you're able to, the other way around. Sorry. Again, a bayis, you could only redeem it for the first year. If you don't redeem it within that first year, then the buyer keeps this house and it actually doesn't even go back to you in Yovel. You have only 1 year to redeem it. Now, the question is, the shaila is regarding this house, nigal achatzayin or ein nigal achatzayin. Could it be redeemed halfway or not halfway? And again, the question is, do we compare it to this day achuzah? Gulassim is day achuzah gama. Do we learn out from this day achuzah, which is a property in a place without a wall around it? And over there, the Torah clearly says, "Mas day achuzah ein nigal achatzayin." That cannot be redeemed halfway. Af hainami ein nigal achatzayin. So too, this bias in the house in the city with a wall cannot be redeemed halfway. Or no, heiche the gali. This chiddush, the Torah says that it can't be redeemed halfway. It's gzeres hakasta. Logically, why shouldn't you be able to redeem halfway? So over there, the Torah says a special chiddush by stei achuzi you can't. By bat terechayim, since it does not say kedei geulasai, you could redeem halfway. Amalei, Sarav Sheish is answered over here. Mimedrash Rab Shimon Nishma, from the way Rab Shimon darshaned in a brayso, we could learn out shaloive. Not only could he could actually borrow money to redeem, and v'goyel l'achatzayin, and he could redeem even halfway. The Tanya, so we learned that Rab Shimon said in a brayso as follows. And here, Rab Shimon in his brayso talks only about his day achuzah. He didn't speak clearly about the house and with the city with the wall around. He speaks about his day achuzah. And here brings a pasuk by his day achuzah. It says V'imgol yigal. if a person wants to redeem his Dei Achuzah. Now this pasuk is talking about a person, not that he didn't sell his Dei Achuzah, but he was makdish his Dei Achuzah to hektish, and he wants to redeem it from hektish. Melamed is double lashon, gol yigol, and this pasuk is teaching me shaloive v'goyel lachatzayin. He can borrow money and redeem from hektish even half of this property that he gave them. Now, Rab Shimon says, "Matam." What's the reason for this? So, as Rashi explains, Rab Shimon always darshans time of the crop. He always gives explanations and reasons for what the pasuk says, meaning that the halacha is based on the reason. So, if the reason doesn't apply, then the halacha doesn't apply. Matam. So, what's the reason for this? So we find by Sdei Achuzah that he has yipa koicha. The Torah says that he has a stronger koyach. What's the stronger koyach? Shemigia yovel v'lo nigala. By Sdei Achuzah, if it comes yovel and he didn't redeem the property, what happens? Chezeres l'baleh b'yovel. So then yovel, he'll get it back. So since over here we see that the Torah, he has nothing to worry really, because in the future it's anyways going to come back to him. So on the other hand, so his koyach is taken away. To redeem it, if he doesn't have money himself, he can't borrow money to redeem, and he can't redeem it halfway. Now makdish, so therefore we say the opposite when it comes to a Sdei Achuzah that you gave to hektish. By a property that you gave to hektish over there, his koyach regarding yovel he doesn't have, because once yovel arrives and he didn't redeem it from hektish, what happens to his property? Over there he doesn't get it back; it goes to the kainim, the yovel. So over here, since in the future he's not going to be able to get it back, so over here yipa koyach by hektish the Torah gave him a stronger koyach shaloive v'goyel lachatzayin. That's a double lashon gol yigal. He could borrow and he could redeem halfway. That's Rab Shimon. Says the Gemara, so now we could apply this to the Meicha Bais, high Meicha Bais B'Bati Arichayim. We could say the same thing. Person that sells a house with a wall around, in the city with a wall around it, so nami hoyo v'hura koichay. The halacha by this house is that she'im malal shana tumima. After a year, v'lei nigala, he did not redeem it, nachlat. That's it. It remains by the buyer and it doesn't go out by yovel. So therefore over here we should say yipa koichay. On the other hand, the Torah gives him a stronger option, shaloiv v'goy lachatzayin, that he can borrow and he can redeem it halfway. That's the conclusion here. But in this, the Gemara asks from a clear brisa that says the opposite. Eisvei, the brisa says as follows: In Goal Yigal, again, this pasuk regarding a person that was makdish to Sdei Achuzah, the double lashon here. Malamed shaloive v'goyel lachatzayin. The same drasha like Rab Shimon said, that this teaches that you can borrow and you could redeem halfway. Now, but this brisa explains as follows: that sheyacha, why do I need a special pasuk for this? Because otherwise, I would make the following kal v'chaimer. V'haloi dinu, I would say a kal v'chaimer that he cannot redeem halfway. Because if when he sold his Sdei Achuzah, not makdish, if when he sold it, sheyipa koyach. So over here, I see the Torah gives him a stronger koyach to get it back. When yovel comes, he gets it back. But nevertheless, he doesn't have the koyach to redeem it halfway. Makdish, when it comes to someone that's makdish Sdei Achuzah, shehura koychai, I see over here that the Torah is giving him less of an option to get it back, because shemigia yovel v'lenigla yetzel lekainim b'yovel, it goes to the kainim, he doesn't get it back. Ein edin shehura koychai she'ein loive v'goyel lachatzayin. Shouldn't it be also for sure the case that he can't borrow or redeem it halfway? So therefore, I would think that he can't redeem it halfway. That's why I need a special pasuk in Gol Yigal. But now on that the Brisa asks, I see by Sdei Achuzah, the halacha is that it's different than when you sell it in a house in a city with a wall around it. The house in the city with a wall around it, you could only redeem it for the first year. That's it. By Sdei Achuzah, you sell it, you can't redeem it for the first 2 years. After 2 years, you can redeem it. So Hura Koicha, here I see that you can't redeem it right away. Maybe that's why you can't redeem it halfway as well. Taima b'makdish, but if you makdish the Sdei Achuzah to hektish, sheyipa koicha legol miyad. From hektish, you can redeem it right away. On that, the Brisa concludes, and here this is the main point of our question: that no, I will prove to you from a person that sells the bayis in the city with a wall, sheyipa koicha legol miyad. Over there, you could redeem it right away, and ve'ein loive v'goy lachatzayin. And nevertheless, it can't be redeemed halfway. So maybe I would learn out hektish when you makdish Sdei Achuzah from there. That's why I need a special pasuk of Mgol Yigal. What's the point here? We have a clear brayso that says that Abayis and Bat Yarichayim cannot be redeemed halfway. Before we explained, according to Rab Shimon, that you could redeem it halfway. So the Gemara says, Lo kasha. This is not a question. Ha Rab Shimon, so Ha Rabbanan that is, and Ha Rab Shimon. The brayso we just quoted is Rabbanan, and the brayso before follows according to Rab Shimon. So as Rashi explains, Rab Shimon holds Darish Taimei Dekra. If you see on one hand the Torah is being stringent about this and is taking away his kayach, that means that on the other hand it's mistaver to make it easier for him to redeem. It always has to be balanced out. That's how we look at these halachas. So therefore, according to Rab Shimon, we say if by a house that's sold in a city you don't get it back by Yovel, if you don't redeem it after a year, it's logical to say that we're giving him more of an option to redeem it even halfway. According to the Rabbanan, it doesn't work that way. Adarab, if you find the Torah is stringent in one aspect, maybe we'll say be stringent in another aspect as well. We're not going to balance it out necessarily. And that's the conclusion of the second brayso. So let's just finish off over here to the point there. The Gemara brings, we have two braysos about this. Tani Chodem, one brayso says, Loive v'goyel v'goyel lachatzayin, that the house in the Ir Chayma, you could redeem halfway. V'tani Yidach, and another brayso says, Ein loive v'goyel v'goyel lachatzayin, you cannot redeem it halfway. So the answer is like we just said, Loi Kasha, Ha Rabbanan, one is according to the Rabbanan, and Ha Rab Shimon. The other one is according to Rab Shimon.